The morning sun cast long shadows across the parking lot of the Riverside Police Department, but Officer Miguel Reyes barely noticed its warmth. His eyes were fixed on Coda, the German shepherd who had once been the pride of the canine unit, now pacing in tight, anxious circles inside the patrol car. The dog's behavior had been growing stranger by the day, and Reyes could feel the weight of his colleague's judgment pressing down on both of them. "He's losing it, Reyes," Sergeant Hammond had said just yesterday, arms crossed, disappointment etched into every line of his weathered face. Maybe it's time to consider early retirement for him. Reyes had wanted to argue, to defend his partner, but the words died in his throat. How could he, when he wasn't even sure himself anymore? It had been 3 months since the incident that changed everything. 3 months since Coda had alerted frantically at an abandoned warehouse, pulling so hard on his lead that Reyes thought the leash would snap. 3 months since they'd searched the building and found nothing, only to discover 2 days later that a missing 7-year-old girl had been held there just hours before. By the time they found her location, she'd already been moved. The girl was eventually recovered, but the damage to Coda's reputation was done. False positive, the report had said. But it wasn't false. Reyes knew that now. They'd just been too late. Since then, every alert, every bark, every moment of tension from Coda was met with rolled eyes and dismissive comments. The dog who had once saved 3 lives and detected over 40 kilograms of illegal substances had become a joke in the break room. "Coda's having another moment," they'd laugh. Reyes climbed out of the car and opened the back door. Coda immediately jumped down, his black and tan coat gleaming in the morning light. The dog's ears were pinned back, his entire body rigid with an energy that Reyes had learned to recognize but no longer trusted himself to interpret. "Easy, boy," Reyes murmured, running a hand along Coda's back. "It's just another Tuesday." But Coda wasn't listening. His attention was locked on something, or someone, across the parking lot. Mila Chen moved slowly through the morning crowd, one hand pressed against her swollen belly, the other gripping the strap of her purse like a lifeline. At 7 months pregnant, every step felt heavier than the last. The world had taken on a hazy, dreamlike quality lately. Sounds seemed muffled, colors too bright, and there was a persistent pressure behind her eyes that no amount of water or rest could relieve. She'd come to the police station to file a report about the strange calls she'd been receiving. Hang-ups at odd hours, a sense of being watched when she walked home from the grocery store. Probably nothing, her husband David had said before leaving for his shift at the factory. But Mila couldn't shake the unease that had settled into her bones. The dizziness hit her as she reached the steps. She paused, closing her eyes, willing the world to stop spinning. The abdominal pain that had been a dull ache for weeks suddenly sharpened, like something inside her was pulling tight, too tight. "Just stress," she whispered to herself, repeating what she'd been telling herself for days. "Just stress. The baby is fine." But was the baby fine? When was the last time she'd felt movement? The thought sent a cold spike of fear through her chest, but she pushed it away. She couldn't afford to panic. She couldn't afford the hospital bills that would come with another false alarm visit to the emergency room. She and David were barely making rent as it was. Mila took a deep breath and forced herself to climb the steps. The moment Mila's foot touched the bottom step, Coda exploded into motion. The leash went taut so suddenly that Reyes nearly lost his grip. Coda lunged forward with a force that belied his training, his entire body straining toward the pregnant woman who had just started up the stairs. The barking that erupted from him wasn't his normal alert bark, sharp, controlled, professional. This was something primal, desperate, a sound that seemed torn from the very depths of his being. "Coda, heel!" Reyes commanded, pulling back on the leash with both hands. But Coda fought him, scrabbling against the pavement, his barks turning into howls. His eyes never left Mila, who had frozen on the steps, her face pale with shock and confusion. What the hell? Officer Brennan emerged from the building, coffee in hand, his expression shifting from surprise to irritation. Reyes, control your dog. I'm trying, Reyes grunted, his boots sliding on the pavement as Coda pulled with strength he'd never shown before. Other officers were gathering now, drawn by the commotion. Reyes could feel their stares, could sense the familiar mixture of concern and judgment. Here it was again. Coda overreacting, Coda being dramatic, Coda proving that he couldn't be trusted. Mila stood frozen on the steps, one hand protectively over her belly, her eyes wide. Is he going to attack me? No, ma'am, I'm so sorry, Reyes called out, his face burning with embarrassment. He wrapped the leash around his wrist twice, pulling Coda back with all his strength. He's been having some issues lately. Please go ahead inside. He won't hurt you. But even as he said the words, a small voice in the back of Reyes's mind whispered, "What if he's trying to tell you something?" Coda's barking reached a fever pitch, his paws scraping desperately at the ground, his whole body trembling with urgency. He wasn't showing aggression. There was no growling, no bared teeth. His tail wasn't raised in dominance. Instead, every line of his body screamed one thing: help her. Help her now. Someone get that dog out of here, Sergeant Hammond barked from the doorway, his voice cutting through the chaos. This is a police station, not a circus. Reyes felt his stomach drop. He looked at Coda, then at Mila, then back at Coda. The dog's eyes met his, and for one crystalline moment, Reyes saw something he couldn't ignore, a desperate plea, an intelligence that transcended training and obedience. Coda knew something. But what? I'm taking him back to the car, Reyes said quietly, already pulling Coda away. The dog resisted every step, his claws scraping lines in the pavement, his cries turning to whimpers that broke Reyes's heart. As Mila disappeared into the building, Coda went silent. The sudden quiet was somehow more disturbing than the barking had been. Reyes looked down at his partner, at the dog who had once been the best in the unit, and felt a terrible certainty settling in his chest. They were missing something critical, but by the time anyone figured out what Coda had been trying to tell them, it would already be too late. Inside the police station, the fluorescent lights felt too bright, too harsh. Mila blinked against them as she approached the front desk, her vision swimming at the edges. The air conditioning was blasting, but she felt hot, too hot, beads of sweat forming along her hairline despite the chill in the air. Can I help you? The desk officer, a woman with kind eyes and graying hair, looked up from her computer. Her name tag read, Officer Martinez. Mila opened her mouth to speak, but the words came out slower than she intended. I need to file a report about some calls, and I think someone's been watching me. Officer Martinez's expression shifted to concern, but not the kind Mila was expecting. The officer's eyes moved from Mila's face to her swollen belly, then back up again. Ma'am, are you feeling all right? You look very pale. I'm fine, Mila said automatically, the lie so practiced it barely registered anymore. Just pregnant. It's been a difficult pregnancy, but The pain hit her like a lightning strike. It was different this time, sharper, deeper, radiating from her abdomen up through her chest. Mila gasped, her hand flying to her belly, and she felt it. A wrongness, a terrible tightness that made her entire body go rigid. Ma'am? Officer Martinez was already moving around the desk. Ma'am, sit down, please. Mila didn't remember sitting, but suddenly she was in a chair, and the room was tilting sideways. Voices swirled around her, concerned, urgent, but somehow distant, as if she were underwater. Get the paramedics! She's pregnant. 7 months. Maybe more. Ma'am, can you hear me? What's your name? Mila. she managed to whisper. "Mila Chen, my baby. Is my baby okay?" But even as she asked the question, a terrible certainty was growing inside her. Something was wrong. Something had been wrong for days, maybe weeks, and she'd ignored it, dismissed it, convinced herself it was normal because she couldn't afford for it to be anything else. The pressure in her abdomen was building, a sensation like something pulling apart from the inside. When she looked down at her hand pressed against her belly, she saw that it was trembling. "When was your last doctor's appointment?" Officer Martinez was crouched beside her now, one hand on Mila's shoulder, her voice steady and calm. 2 weeks ago. They said my blood pressure was high, but..." Mila's breath hitched. "But I've been taking it easy. I've been resting. I did everything they told me to." Another wave of pain crashed through her, and this time Mila couldn't stop the cry that escaped her lips. Outside, in the parking lot, Reyes had finally managed to get Coda back into the patrol car, but the moment he closed the door, the dog went wild. Coda threw himself against the window with such force that Reyes feared the glass would shatter. The dog's barking was continuous now, a desperate, unbroken sound that echoed across the parking lot and drew stares from everyone within earshot. "Coda, stop!" Reyes commanded, but his voice lacked conviction. Because deep down, in a place he'd been trying to ignore for 3 months, Reyes knew the truth. Coda had never been wrong. Not about the warehouse. Not about any of it. They'd just failed to listen in time. Officer Brennan walked over, his earlier irritation replaced with something closer to pity. "You need to take him home, man. Get him checked out by a vet. This isn't normal." "He's trying to tell us something," Reyes said quietly, the words feeling both foolish and absolutely certain the moment they left his mouth. Brennan raised an eyebrow. "Tell us what? That he doesn't like pregnant women? Reyes, I know you feel guilty about what happened 3 months ago, but you can't..." It wasn't a false positive. Reyes turned to face Brennan fully, his jaw set. The girl had been in that warehouse. We just got there too late. Coda was right. "Maybe," Brennan said carefully, "but that doesn't mean he's right now. Sometimes a bark is just a bark." Reyes looked back at Coda, at the way the dog's entire body was pressed against the window, his eyes fixed on the police station entrance. The dog wasn't barking randomly. He wasn't reacting to a smell or a sound or some invisible threat. He was focused, intentional, desperate. "What if she's in danger?" Reyes asked. "That woman. What if something's wrong and we're standing here doing nothing?" Brennan sighed. "Then the officers inside will handle it. It's not our call." But it should be, Reyes thought. It should be my call, because Coda is my partner, and I'm supposed to trust him. The question was, did he have the courage to do it? The paramedics arrived within 6 minutes. Fast, but to Mila, it felt like hours. She was lying on the floor now, though she didn't remember how she'd gotten there. Officer Martinez was talking to her, saying words that Mila's brain couldn't quite process. Something about staying calm, about breathing, about help being here. But the pain had transformed into something else entirely. It wasn't sharp anymore. It was deep, visceral, a sensation like her body was tearing itself apart from the inside. And beneath it all, a growing numbness that frightened her more than the pain ever could. 2 paramedics burst through the door, their equipment clattering as they rushed to her side. 29-year-old female, approximately 7 months pregnant, sudden onset of severe abdominal pain, and altered mental status, Officer Martinez was saying, her voice crisp and professional even as her hand stayed gentle on Mila's arm. One of the paramedics, a young man with steady hands and worried eyes, was taking her blood pressure. Mila watched his face, saw the flicker of concern that he tried to hide. "BP is 170/115, he called to his partner. "Heart rate 132. The numbers meant nothing to Mila, but she could read the urgency in the way they moved, the way they exchanged glances. "Mila, I need you to tell me, are you experiencing any bleeding?" the female paramedic asked, her voice gentle but firm. I don't think so. I don't know." Everything was confused now, the edges of reality blurring. "Is my baby okay? Please. Just tell me if my baby is okay." The paramedics didn't answer directly. Instead, they pulled out a portable fetal monitor, and Mila felt the cold press of the device against her belly. For a few seconds, there was only silence. Then, a heartbeat. Fast, fluttering, but there. Alive. Mila's eyes filled with tears. "Thank God. Thank—" "The baby's heart rate is elevated," the male paramedic said quietly to his partner. 180 beats per minute, and I'm seeing signs of fetal distress." Fetal distress. The words cut through Mila's relief like a knife. "What does that mean?" she asked, her voice breaking. "What's happening to my baby?" The female paramedic met her eyes, and Mila saw the truth there before the words came. "We need to get you to the hospital immediately. We're going to take very good care of you, okay? But we need to move fast." They were lifting her onto a stretcher now, moving with practiced efficiency. Mila tried to sit up, tried to ask more questions, but the world was tilting again, darkness creeping in at the edges of her vision. "My husband," she gasped. "Someone needs to call David. He's at the factory. He doesn't know—" "We'll make sure he's contacted," Officer Martinez assured her, squeezing her hand one more time before the paramedics wheeled her toward the door. As they burst out into the sunlight, Mila caught a glimpse of a police car in the parking lot. Through the window, she could see the German shepherd, the one that had been barking so desperately at her. The dog had gone silent now, but his eyes were fixed on her with an intensity that made her breath catch. For one strange, disorienting moment, Mila could have sworn the dog looked relieved, as if he'd been waiting for exactly this to happen, as if he'd known all along. Reyes watched the ambulance pull away, lights flashing, siren wailing. His heart was pounding so hard he could feel it in his throat. "That's her," he said to Brennan. "The pregnant woman. The one Coda was reacting to." Brennan's expression had changed. The skepticism was gone, replaced by something closer to unease. "Could be a coincidence. Or it could be exactly what Coda was trying to tell us." Reyes turned to look at his partner through the car window. Coda had finally stopped barking, but his body was still tense, still alert. He knew something was wrong with her. "You don't know that?" "Yes," Reyes said quietly, certainty settling over him like a weight. "I do." Officer Martinez came out of the building, her face grave. She walked straight to Reyes and Brennan. "That woman, Mila Chen, the paramedics think it might be placental abruption. The placenta is separating from the uterine wall. It's life-threatening for both mother and baby." Reyes felt his blood run cold. How long has it been developing?" Martinez shook her head. "They don't know. Could be hours, could be days. The symptoms can be subtle at first. She might not have known how serious it was." Brennan was staring at Reyes now, realization dawning on his face. "Your dog. He's been reacting to her for 2 weeks, Reyes finished, his voice hollow. "Coda's been trying to alert us for 2 weeks." The three officers stood in silence, the weight of that truth settling over them. Coda had known. He'd sensed the chemical changes in her body, the stress hormones, the danger that was building inside her. He'd tried to warn them, over and over, and no one had listened. "Will she be okay?" Reyes asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. Martinez's expression was grim. "The paramedics said if they'd arrived even 15 minutes later—" She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Reyes closed his eyes, a terrible realization crashing over him. They'd almost missed it. Again. If Mila hadn't walked into the police station this morning, if she'd gone home instead or to the grocery store or anywhere else, would anyone have known until it was too late? And even though they'd called the ambulance, even though help was on the way, had they already lost precious time? Had Coda's warnings been ignored for so long that the damage was already done? "I need to follow that ambulance," Reyes said suddenly, moving toward his patrol car. "I need to know if she's going to be okay." "Reyes," Brennan started. "No." Reyes spun around, his voice sharp with emotion. 3 months ago, I didn't trust my partner when I should have. I let other people's doubts get inside my head, and we lost time we couldn't get back. I'm not making that mistake again. He opened the car door, and Coda immediately pressed against him, the dog's body trembling with residual tension. "Good boy," Reyes whispered, running his hand through Coda's fur. "You were trying to save her, weren't you? You've been trying to save her this whole time." Coda let out a soft whine, and for the first time in 3 months, Reyes understood it clearly. "I tried to tell you. Why wouldn't anyone listen?" Reyes climbed into the car, his jaw set with determination. "Let's go make sure she's okay, partner. Let's finish what you started." As he pulled out of the parking lot, following the distant wail of the ambulance siren, one thought played over and over in his mind. Please let us be in time. Please let Coda's warning have been enough. But deep down, Reyes knew the terrible truth. They were racing against a clock that might have already run out. St. Mary's Hospital emergency room was a controlled chaos of beeping monitors, rushing footsteps, and urgent voices. Mila was wheeled through the automatic doors into a world of blinding white lights and antiseptic smells that made her stomach turn. Female, 29 years old, 28 weeks pregnant, suspected placental abruption. The paramedics' words blended with the voices of doctors and nurses who descended on her like a well-choreographed dance. Hands were everywhere, checking her pulse, adjusting the IV they'd started in the ambulance, placing monitors on her belly and chest. "Mila, can you hear me? I'm Dr. Ochoa." A woman's face swam into view. Dark eyes, steady voice, graying hair pulled back in a tight bun. "We're going to take care of you and your baby, but I need you to stay with me. Can you do that?" Mila tried to nod, but the movement made the world spin. The pain had changed again. It was constant now, a deep, burning pressure that felt like something inside her was fundamentally wrong. "My baby," she whispered. "Please save my baby." Dr. Ochoa's expression was serious but not unkind. "We're going to do everything we can. But right now I need you to tell me, have you had any bleeding? Any vaginal bleeding at all?" "No, I don't think so." But even as Mila said it, she remembered the spotting she'd noticed 2 days ago. Just a little, barely worth mentioning. She'd told herself it was nothing. "Maybe. Just a little. I thought it was normal." Dr. Ochoa exchanged a glance with the nurse beside her, a look that Mila couldn't read but that made her chest tighten with fear. "Prep for an emergency ultrasound," Dr. Ochoa ordered. "And page Dr. Kim in OB. Tell him we might need the OR ready." Or operating room. The words penetrated through Mila's fog of pain and fear. Are you going to do a C-section?" Her voice came out small, childlike. "Let's see what we're dealing with first," Dr. Ochoa said, but her tone was evasive, and Mila knew, she knew, that things were worse than anyone was saying. A portable ultrasound machine was wheeled to her bedside. The technician, a young woman with gentle hands, squeezed the cold gel onto Mila's swollen belly. The pressure made Mila wince, but she forced herself to stay still, to watch the grainy black and white image that appeared on the screen. She'd seen ultrasounds before, at her appointments, seeing her baby's tiny hands and feet, the miracle of that fast, flickering heartbeat. But this time, the atmosphere was different. The technician's face was carefully neutral, too neutral, as she moved the wand across Mila's abdomen. "There's the baby," she said quietly, and Mila saw the familiar shape, the curve of a spine, the round skull, those impossibly tiny limbs. But then she saw something else. Something dark spreading across the screen, a shadow that didn't belong. "What is that?" Mila asked, her voice rising with panic. "What is that dark area?" Dr. Ochoa leaned closer to the screen, her jaw tightening. "That's blood. Mila, your placenta has partially separated from the uterine wall. That dark area is bleeding, a significant amount of it." The room tilted. Mila couldn't breathe. "But the baby's heart rate is still strong, but we're seeing signs of distress. The placenta is how your baby gets oxygen and nutrients. The more it separates, the less oxygen the baby receives." It was happening. The thing every pregnant woman fears, the nightmare she'd pushed away every time it tried to surface in her mind. This wasn't supposed to happen to her. She'd been careful, she'd rested, she'd done everything right. "However, Dr. Ochoa continued, and something in her tone made Mila focus through the terror. "You're lucky. Very lucky." "Lucky?" The word came out as a sob. "How am I lucky?" Dr. Ochoa met her eyes. "Because you came in when you did. Most women with placental abruption this advanced don't know what's happening until it's too late. The separation can happen suddenly, catastrophically. But yours has been gradual. It's been developing for days, maybe even weeks. And somehow, you ended up here, in medical care, before the critical moment." Weeks. The word echoed in Mila's mind. Coda had been reacting to her for 2 weeks. The thought came unbidden, strange and impossible. That dog, the one that had barked so desperately at her in the parking lot, could he have known? Could he have sensed what was happening inside her body before even she knew? "We need to deliver the baby now," Dr. Ochoa was saying. "At 28 weeks, the baby has a good chance, a very good chance, but we can't wait. The placenta is continuing to separate, and if we delay—" "Do it," Mila said, surprised by the strength in her own voice. "Please, do whatever you need to do to save my baby." Dr. Ochoa nodded, already signaling to the nurses. "We're going to take you up to the OR. We'll do everything we can." But her words were cut off by a sharp, urgent beeping from one of the monitors. Every head in the room turned. The baby's heart rate, which had been fast but steady, was dropping. Mila watched the numbers on the screen fall. 180, 170, 160. And with each decrease, the beeping grew slower, more ominous. "Fetal bradycardia!" someone called out. "Heart rate at 150 and falling." Dr. Ochoa's calm demeanor cracked for just a moment, a flash of urgency, of fear. "We need to move now. Get her to the OR immediately. Page anesthesia. Tell them we need them ready 2 minutes ago." The world became a blur of motion. Mila's gurney was being pushed rapidly through corridors, the ceiling tiles streaking past overhead. People were running alongside her, voices shouting medical terms she didn't understand. But beneath it all, one sound dominated everything else. The slowing beep, beep, beep of her baby's heartbeat. "Stay with us, little one," she heard Dr. Ochoa murmur. "Just stay with us a little longer." Reyes burst through the emergency room doors with Coda at his side. Normally, dogs weren't allowed inside hospitals, but right now, Reyes didn't care about the rules. "Officer, you can't bring that dog in here!" A security guard was moving toward them, hand raised. "That woman who came in the ambulance, Mila Chen, where is she?" Reyes demanded. "Sir, I can't give out patient information." "That dog saved her life." Reyes's voice cracked with emotion. "He's been trying to warn us for 2 weeks that something was wrong." He detected what was happening to her before anyone else knew. I need to know if she's okay. I need to know if we were in time. The security guard hesitated, looking between Reyes's badge, Coda's alert posture, and the desperate sincerity in the officer's eyes. "Wait here," he finally said. "Let me find out." As the guard walked away, Reyes knelt beside Coda. The dog was calmer now, but his attention was fixed on the doors leading deeper into the hospital, his nose working, processing the thousand scents that humans couldn't even begin to detect. "Can you still sense her?" Reyes whispered. "Is she okay?" Coda whined softly, a sound that could have meant anything: concern, uncertainty, hope. The security guard returned with a nurse. The same Officer Martinez who had been at the police station was with them, still in uniform. She must have followed the ambulance, too. "Officer Reyes," Martinez said quietly. "They've taken her into emergency surgery. Emergency C-section. The placenta was separating. It's something called placental abruption. If she hadn't come to the station when she did..." She didn't finish the sentence. "Will she survive?" Reyes asked. "Will the baby?" "They don't know yet." Martinez's voice was heavy. "It's serious. Very serious." Reyes felt his legs go weak. He'd hoped, that getting her to the hospital would be enough. That once she was in professional hands, everything would be okay. But what if it wasn't? What if they'd realized the truth too late after all? "There's something else," Martinez said, her expression troubled. "I looked into Mila Chen's medical history, or tried to. She hasn't been to a doctor since her initial pregnancy confirmation at 8 weeks. No prenatal care, no follow-up appointments despite being told she had high blood pressure." "Why not?" Reyes asked, though a terrible suspicion was already forming. "No insurance, and what she has doesn't cover much. She and her husband are working class. He's on double shifts at the factory. She was working part-time until last month. They couldn't afford the appointments." The words hit Reyes like a physical blow. Mila had been walking around for weeks, maybe months, with a life-threatening condition developing inside her, and she'd had no idea because she couldn't afford to find out. If Coda hadn't detected it, if Coda hadn't kept trying to alert them, Mila would have gone home that morning. She would have collapsed alone in her apartment, and by the time anyone found her... "Your dog," Martinez said softly, looking down at Coda. "He really knew, didn't he?" "Yes," Reyes said, his voice thick with emotion. "He knew." Coda suddenly stood, his body going rigid. His ears perked forward, and a low, distressed whine escaped his throat. Reyes's blood ran cold. "What is it, boy? What's wrong?" The dog's attention was laser-focused on the doors leading to the surgical wing. His whining grew more intense, more urgent. And then, as if in answer, an alarm began to sound somewhere deeper in the hospital, sharp, insistent, terrifying. A code blue. Someone was dying. In the operating room, Dr. Ochoa's hands moved with practiced precision, but her heart was racing. The C-section had started as controlled as possible under emergency circumstances. The anesthesiologist had Mila under general anesthesia. The surgical team was prepared. Everything should have been going according to plan. But then Mila's blood pressure had dropped. Then the bleeding had increased, far more than expected. "BP is 80/50 and falling," the anesthesiologist called out. "She's losing too much blood." "I can see that," Dr. Ochoa snapped, her gloved hands working inside Mila's abdomen. The placenta hadn't just partially separated. It had been concealing something worse, something none of them had anticipated. "What is it?" Dr. Kim, the OB specialist, asked from beside her. "Placenta accreta," Dr. Ochoa said, her voice tight. "The placenta has grown into the uterine wall. That's why the separation caused so much bleeding. It's tearing the uterine muscle itself." "Placenta accreta," one of the most dangerous complications in obstetrics. When the placenta grows too deeply into the uterine wall, removing it becomes a hemorrhagic nightmare. "Can you get the baby out?" Dr. Kim asked. "Working on it." Dr. Ochoa's hands moved carefully, expertly, cutting through layers of tissue. "Almost there." And then, a moment that felt like a miracle. A tiny cry filled the operating room. Dr. Ochoa lifted the baby, impossibly small, skin almost translucent, but alive, moving, breathing. "It's a girl," she announced, handing the infant to the waiting neonatal team. 28 weeks, approximately 2 pounds. The NICU nurses swept the baby away to their corner of the OR, working quickly to assess, to stabilize, to give this tiny life the best possible chance. But even as they did, the monitors attached to Mila began screaming warnings. "She's crashing!" the anesthesiologist shouted. "BP is 60/30, heart rate dropping." Dr. Ochoa looked down at the catastrophic bleeding in Mila's abdomen. The placenta was so deeply embedded that trying to remove it was causing uncontrollable hemorrhaging. She had seconds to make an impossible decision. "We need to do a hysterectomy," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos. "It's the only way to stop the bleeding." It meant Mila would never have another child, but it also meant Mila might live. "Do it," Dr. Kim said, already moving to assist. Their hands moved in perfect synchronization, racing against the clock, against the blood loss, against death itself. In the corner of the OR, the tiny baby girl, Mila's daughter, let out another weak but determined cry. She was fighting. Her mother was fighting. And in a parking lot 2 weeks ago, a dog had known, had tried to tell anyone who would listen, that this moment was coming. The question was, would the warning have come in time? Or would they discover, in the next few minutes, that despite everything, despite Coda's desperate alerts, despite the ambulance, despite the surgery, it was already too late? Dr. Ochoa's hands moved faster. The monitors continued their terrible symphony of alarms. And somewhere in the waiting area, a German shepherd named Coda howled, a sound of anguish, of hope, of a desperate prayer that only he could voice. The surgical lights blazed overhead like dying stars, casting harsh shadows across Dr. Ochoa's focused face. Her hands, steady despite the crisis, worked with the kind of precision that came from years of training and countless surgeries. But this was different. This was a race against death itself. "Suction," she commanded, and immediately the surgical assistant cleared the field of blood. So much blood that the sheets beneath Mila were soaked through, crimson pooling on the floor beneath the operating table. "We're losing her," the anesthesiologist said, his voice tight. "BP is 50/20. We need blood. Now." "Massive transfusion protocol," Dr. Ochoa ordered without looking up. "Get me O negative as much as you have, and somebody tell me how that baby's doing." From the corner of the OR, one of the NICU nurses called back, "Baby's stable for now. Respiratory distress, as expected for 28 weeks. But she's fighting. APGAR scores are better than anticipated." A small mercy. The baby was alive. But her mother was slipping away with every second. Dr. Ochoa's hands moved through the emergency hysterectomy with controlled urgency. Normally, this procedure would take an hour, maybe more. She had maybe 10 minutes before Mila's heart gave out entirely. "Clamp," she said, and Dr. Kim handed it to her without a word. They'd worked together for years, could anticipate each other's needs in moments like this. The uterus was coming free now, but the bleeding wasn't stopping. Mila's body had been losing blood for so long, probably days, leaking slowly from the separating placenta, that her system was failing. Her blood wasn't clotting properly anymore. "Starting coagulation factors," the anesthesiologist announced, pushing medications through Mila's IV. "But I need you to finish this, Ochoa. She doesn't have much time." "I know," Dr. Ochoa said through gritted teeth. Her hands moved faster, tying off blood vessels, removing the damaged tissue, trying to stem the tide of bleeding that threatened to drain every drop of life from this young woman's body. In her mind, a terrible thought kept repeating. This shouldn't have happened. If she'd had proper prenatal care, if someone had caught this earlier. But there was no time for regrets. Only action. "Last suture," she said, her voice hoarse. "Come on, Mila. Stay with us. Your daughter needs you." The final stitch pulled tight. For one terrible, suspended moment, nothing changed. The monitors continued their frantic alarms. The blood continued to seep. And then, slowly, miraculously, the bleeding began to slow. "BP is rising," the anesthesiologist said, disbelief coloring his voice. 55/25, 60/30. She's stabilizing." Dr. Ochoa let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. "Keep the blood coming. Monitor her closely. She's not out of the woods yet, but—" "You did it," Dr. Kim said quietly, respect clear in his voice. That was too close," Dr. Ochoa finished. She looked down at Mila's pale, unconscious face. "Much too close." In the waiting area, Reyes paced like a caged animal. Coda sat beside the chair where Officer Martinez waited, the dog's eyes never leaving the doors that led to the surgical wing. David Chen had arrived 20 minutes ago. Reyes had watched him burst through the emergency room doors, wild-eyed and terrified, demanding to know where his wife was. The factory supervisor had driven him straight from work, and David still wore his coveralls, stained with grease and sweat. Now he sat in one of the plastic chairs, his head in his hands, his body shaking with silent sobs. Reyes wanted to say something, wanted to tell him that Mila had come in when she did because Coda had alerted them that there was still hope. But the words felt hollow. How could he explain that a dog had been the only one who noticed? That if Mila had taken a different route that morning, if she'd decided not to file that report about the strange phone calls, she might be dying alone in her apartment right now. "Officer Reyes?" He turned to see a doctor emerging from the surgical wing, Dr. Ochoa, her scrubs stained with blood, her face exhausted but not defeated. David was on his feet instantly. "My wife, Mila, she's alive," Dr. Ochoa said, and the relief in the room was palpable. "She lost a tremendous amount of blood, and we had to perform an emergency hysterectomy to save her life. She won't be able to have more children, but she's alive, Mr. Chen. She's going to survive." David's legs gave out and Martinez caught him before he collapsed. "Thank God," he sobbed. "Thank God. And the baby? Our baby?" Dr. Ochoa's expression softened. "You have a daughter. She's very small, just over 2 pounds, and she'll need to stay in the NICU for quite some time. But her initial assessments are promising. She's a fighter, Mr. Chen." "Can I see them?" David asked, his voice breaking. "Can I see my family?" "Mila is still in recovery, but you can see your daughter. Follow me." As David followed the doctor toward the NICU, Reyes felt his own legs go weak. He sank into a chair and Coda immediately pressed against him, the dog's warm body a solid comfort. "You saved them," Reyes whispered, running his hands through Coda's fur. "You saved both of them, boy." Martinez sat down beside him. "The doctor said Mila had been bleeding internally for days. If she hadn't come to the station this morning, if your dog hadn't been alerting, she would have collapsed at home. Probably would have died before an ambulance could even get there." Reyes closed his eyes, the weight of what almost happened crushing down on him. "We ignored him for 2 weeks, Martinez. 2 weeks of Coda trying to tell us something was wrong, and we thought he was overreacting. We thought he couldn't be trusted anymore." "But you followed your instincts today," Martinez said gently. "When it mattered most, you listened to him." "Almost too late." Reyes's voice was thick with emotion. We almost let it be too late. Coda whined softly and licked Reyes's hand, a gesture of comfort, of forgiveness. Dogs don't hold grudges, you know, Martinez said with a small smile. He's just glad she's okay. Reyes looked down at his partner, at this remarkable animal who had been labeled as unreliable, as dramatic, as broken. An animal who had detected a life-threatening medical emergency before any human knew it existed, and who had tried desperately to make someone, anyone, understand. "I'm sorry," Reyes whispered to Coda. "I'm so sorry I didn't trust you. I'm sorry I let them make me doubt you." Coda's tail wagged once, a small, gentle movement that said more than words ever could. "I forgive you. I always forgive you." 3 hours later, Mila opened her eyes. The first thing she saw was David's face, tear-streaked and exhausted, hovering over her. The second thing she noticed was the pain, a deep, throbbing ache in her abdomen that made her gasp. "Mila!" David's voice broke on her name. "Oh God, Mila, you're awake!" "The baby," she managed to whisper, her throat raw. "Our baby. She's okay." David's hands were shaking as he held hers. "She's so tiny, Mila, so impossibly tiny, but she's alive. She's breathing. The doctors say she has a good chance." Relief flooded through Mila, so intense it was almost painful. "A girl? We have a daughter?" "We have a daughter," David confirmed, his voice filled with wonder and grief and joy all at once. "And we almost lost you both. Mila, why didn't you tell me how bad you were feeling? Why didn't you go to the doctor?" Mila's eyes filled with tears. "We couldn't afford it. I didn't want to worry you. I thought it was normal pregnancy stuff. I didn't know—" "I don't care about the money," David said fiercely. "I don't care about any of it. I almost lost you. Do you understand? I almost lost you both." "I'm sorry," Mila whispered. "I'm so sorry." David pressed his forehead against hers, his tears falling onto her face. "The doctors said if you'd been at home when it happened, when the bleeding got worse, you wouldn't have made it. They said coming to the police station saved your life." Mila remembered. Through the haze of pain and medication, walking up those steps, remembered the German shepherd barking, desperate and urgent. Remembered the way the dog had looked at her, as if he could see right through her skin to the danger growing inside. "There was a dog," she said softly. "A police dog. He was barking at me. I thought he was going to attack me, but..." "But what?" David asked. "But he wasn't being aggressive. He was trying to warn me." The realization hit her fully now, clear and undeniable. He knew something was wrong. He knew before anyone else did. A soft knock at the door interrupted them. A nurse poked her head in. "Mrs. Chen? There's a police officer outside who'd like to speak with you if you're feeling up to it. He has his canine partner with him." Mila's heart skipped a beat. "The German shepherd? The one who was barking?" "That's the one," the nurse said with a gentle smile. "The officer says his dog has been concerned about you. I know it sounds strange, but—" "Let them in," Mila said immediately. "Please." The nurse nodded and disappeared. A moment later, Officer Reyes entered, and beside him, moving with careful dignity, was Coda. The moment the dog saw Mila, his entire demeanor changed. His tail began to wag, slowly at first, then faster. A soft whine escaped his throat, but it wasn't distressed. It was relief. "Mrs. Chen," Reyes said, his voice rough with emotion. "I'm Officer Miguel Reyes. This is my partner, Coda. I wanted to apologize. And to explain." "Apologize?" Mila asked, confused. "For what?" "For not listening sooner." Reyes's jaw tightened. "Coda has been alerting on you for 2 weeks. Every time he sensed you near the station or in the area, he tried to tell us something was wrong. He's trained to detect medical emergencies, changes in body chemistry, stress hormones, danger that humans can't see, but I didn't trust him. I thought he was having behavioral issues, and because I didn't listen, you walked around for 2 weeks with a life-threatening condition that none of us... His voice broke, and he had to stop. Mila stared at the dog, at this beautiful animal who had tried so hard to save her. 2 weeks? She whispered. He knew for 2 weeks? Yes, ma'am. Tears spilled down Mila's cheeks. Can I touch him? Is that allowed? Reyes nodded, and he guided Coda closer to the hospital bed. Slowly, carefully, Mila reached out her hand. Coda moved forward and gently placed his head beneath her palm. His dark eyes looked up at her with an intelligence and compassion that took her breath away. Thank you, Mila whispered, running her fingers through his soft fur. Thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for trying to tell them, even when no one would listen. Coda's tail wagged faster, and he let out a soft, content sigh. He's been worried about you, Reyes said quietly. Even after the ambulance took you away, he wouldn't settle. It was like he needed to know you were okay. I am okay, Mila said, looking into Coda's eyes. Because of you, I'm okay. My daughter is okay. You saved us both. David stood up and extended his hand to Reyes. Thank you. Thank you for bringing him here. Thank you for listening to him when it mattered. Reyes shook his hand, then looked down at Coda with profound respect and love. He's the hero, not me. I just finally learned to trust my partner the way I should have all along. Later that evening, after Reyes and Coda had left, Mila asked to see her daughter. The nurses wheeled her bed to the NICU window, where she could see the tiny isolette that held her baby girl. So impossibly small, covered in wires and tubes, but alive, fighting. What should we name her? David asked, his hand warm in hers. Mila thought about the chain of events that had led to this moment. The mysterious phone calls that had scared her enough to go to the police station. The dog who had refused to give up trying to save her. The doctors who had fought to keep both her and her baby alive. Hope, she said softly. Her name is Hope. David smiled through his tears. Hope. It's perfect. They stood there together, watching their daughter breathe, watching her tiny chest rise and fall with each determined breath. She was here. Against all odds, against all the ways this could have gone wrong, she was here. And somewhere in the city, a German shepherd named Coda slept peacefully for the first time in 2 weeks, knowing that the mother and baby he'd tried so desperately to save were both going to be okay. 3 months later, the autumn sun filtered through the windows of St. Mary's Hospital NICU, painting golden stripes across the rows of isolettes where the tiniest patients fought their earliest battles. Mila Chen sat in the rocking chair beside her daughter's station, a picture book open in her lap, reading softly, even though she knew Hope couldn't understand the words yet. But the nurses had told her that babies could hear their mothers' voices, could feel the vibration of love and comfort even through the plastic walls of their temporary homes. So Mila read and sang and talked to her daughter every single day. Hope had grown. Not much. She was still so small, barely 5 pounds now, but every ounce was a victory. Every day without setbacks was a celebration. The doctors said she was doing remarkably well for a baby born at 28 weeks. Strong lungs, good reflexes, a fighter, just like her mother. You know what today is, sweet girl? Mila whispered, gently placing her finger against the isolette's porthole. Hope's tiny hand, barely the size of a walnut, twitched in response. Today is a very special day. Today, someone very important is coming to visit you. As if on cue, there was a gentle knock at the NICU entrance. Mila looked up to see Officer Reyes standing at the door, and beside him, sitting at perfect attention, was Coda. Her heart swelled. "Come in," she called softly, mindful of the other babies sleeping nearby. Reyes entered, and Coda walked beside him with the careful dignity of a dog who understood he was somewhere sacred. The canine's eyes immediately found Mila, and his tail began a slow, happy wag. "Mrs. Chen," Reyes said, a warm smile crossing his face. "It's good to see you looking so well." "Please, call me Mila." She stood carefully. The surgery had healed, but she was still regaining her strength. "And thank you for coming. I've been wanting you both to meet Hope properly." She gestured toward the isolette, and Reyes approached, Coda staying close by his side. When the dog saw the tiny baby inside, surrounded by wires and monitors, his ears perked forward with interest. "She's beautiful," Reyes said softly, genuine awe in his voice. "So much bigger than I expected." Mila laughed quietly. 5 pounds feels huge to us now. When she was born, she was just over 2 pounds. The doctors say she might be able to come home in another month or two. That's incredible. Reyes looked down at Coda, who was staring intently at the baby. "What do you think, partner? Did we do good?" Coda's tail wagged faster, and he let out the softest whine, a sound of approval, of satisfaction, of a job well done. Mila knelt down carefully beside the dog, bringing herself to his level. "Coda, I want you to meet Hope. Hope, this is Coda. He's the reason you're here. He's the reason we're both here." She reached out and stroked Coda's head, and the dog leaned into her touch, his dark eyes warm and gentle. "I've been thinking a lot about that morning," Mila said, looking up at Reyes. "About how many things had to go exactly right for us to survive. If I hadn't gotten those strange phone calls that scared me into going to the police station, if Coda hadn't been there that exact morning, if you hadn't followed the ambulance to the hospital, any one thing different and—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. "I've been thinking about it too," Reyes admitted. "About all the ways we almost lost you. About how close we came to ignoring Coda one more time." He paused, his hand resting on Coda's shoulders. "But I've also been thinking about second chances, about trust, about learning to listen to the things we can't always see or understand." "Has anything changed?" Mila asked. "At the department, do they trust Coda now?" A smile spread across Reyes's face, the first genuinely happy smile Mila had seen from him. "Everything has changed. After what happened with you, the chief launched an investigation into Coda's alerts over the past year. Turns out every single one of them had merit. That warehouse 3 months ago? They found DNA evidence that the missing girl had been there, exactly when Coda alerted. We just didn't search thoroughly enough." Mila's eyes widened. "So he was never wrong. Not once." "Not once," Reyes confirmed, pride evident in his voice. "He's back on full duty now. Actually, he's become something of a legend. Other canine units are studying his training to understand how he detects medical emergencies so effectively. The department is even starting a program to train more dogs like him, medical alert canines who can sense things like seizures, heart attacks, diabetic episodes before they become critical." "That's wonderful," Mila said, her voice thick with emotion. "He could save so many more people." "He already has," Reyes said. 2 weeks ago, he alerted on an elderly man at the grocery store. Man insisted he was fine, but Coda wouldn't leave him alone. The man finally agreed to go to the hospital. Turned out he was having a silent heart attack. Doctors said if he'd gone home, he wouldn't have made it through the night. Tears spilled down Mila's cheeks. "He's a miracle, a genuine miracle." "He's a good dog who finally has people who trust him," Reyes said simply. "That's all he ever needed." David Chen arrived then, carrying 2 cups of coffee and a bag of food from the cafeteria. He stopped short when he saw Reyes and Coda, then his face broke into a wide smile. "Officer Reyes, Coda!" He set down the coffee and immediately knelt beside the dog, scratching behind his ears. "Good to see you both. Mila told me you were coming today." "Mr. Chen," Reyes shook his hand warmly. "How are you holding up?" "Better," David said, glancing at his wife and daughter. "Much better. I cut back to single shifts at the factory. We can't afford it, but—" He looked at Mila with absolute devotion. "But I almost lost everything that matters. Money we can figure out. Time with my family, that's irreplaceable." "Actually," Reyes said, reaching into his jacket pocket, "I wanted to talk to you both about something. After your story got out, the department released a press statement about Coda saving you. The community response was overwhelming." He pulled out an envelope and handed it to Mila. "What is this?" she asked, confused. "Open it." With trembling fingers, Mila opened the envelope. Inside was a check, and when she saw the amount, she gasped. $35,000? She looked up at Reyes in shock. "I don't understand." "It's from a community fund," Reyes explained. "People from all over the city donated. Some gave $5, some gave $5,000. They wanted to help, to make sure Hope has everything she needs when she comes home and to cover your medical bills. There's also a fund set up for David, if you decide to keep working reduced hours." Mila couldn't speak. She pressed the check to her chest and sobbed, great, heaving sobs of relief and gratitude and overwhelming emotion. David wrapped his arms around her, his own eyes wet with tears. "Thank you," he managed to say to Reyes. "Thank you so much." "Don't thank me," Reyes said gently. "Thank Coda, and thank a community that believes in helping each other. That's what this is really about. People taking care of people." 6 months later, the park was alive with the sounds of spring, children laughing on the playground, birds singing in the trees, the distant bark of dogs playing in the off-leash area. Mila sat on a blanket spread across the grass, Hope cradled in her arms. Her daughter had come home 2 months ago, finally healthy enough to leave the NICU. She was still small, just 12 pounds now, but she was thriving. Her eyes were bright and curious, tracking the movement of leaves in the wind, the flutter of butterflies, the world that was slowly becoming her home. "Someone's coming to see you, Hope," Mila whispered, kissing her daughter's forehead. "Your guardian angel." Across the park, she could see Reyes and Coda approaching, but they weren't alone. With them was Sergeant Hammond, Officer Martinez, Officer Brennan, and several other members of the police department, many of whom Mila had never met. "We hope you don't mind the crowd," Reyes said as they reached the blanket. Everyone wanted to see how Hope was doing. "I don't mind at all," Mila said, beaming. David was beside her now, having returned from getting ice cream from a nearby vendor. Coda approached carefully, and Mila lowered Hope so the dog could see her. The baby's eyes locked onto Coda, and she let out a gurgling laugh, one of the first real laughs she'd ever made. Coda's tail wagged with pure joy. He sniffed gently at Hope's tiny feet, then looked up at Mila as if to say, "She's perfect. You did good." "We wanted to give you something," Sergeant Hammond said, stepping forward. In his hands was a framed certificate and a medal on a blue ribbon. "This is the department's Medal of Valor. It's usually reserved for officers who risk their lives in the line of duty. But we all agreed, unanimously, that Coda earned this." He handed the frame to Reyes, who knelt beside Coda, showing him the medal. The certificate reads, "For exceptional courage, unwavering dedication, and the salvation of 2 lives through extraordinary detection skills," Hammond continued. "Coda, K-9 Unit, Riverside Police Department, is hereby awarded the Medal of Valor." Applause broke out, not just from the gathered officers, but from other park visitors who had noticed the ceremony and come to watch. Reyes attached the medal to Coda's collar, then wrapped his arms around his partner. "I'm sorry I ever doubted you," he whispered into the dog's fur. You're the best partner I could ever ask for. Coda licked Reyes's face, tail wagging so hard his entire back end wiggled. There's one more thing, Martinez said, stepping forward with a small gift bag. This is from all of us, for Hope. Mila opened the bag and pulled out a small stuffed German shepherd, soft and cuddly, with a tiny badge sewn onto its collar. So she'll always remember who saved her life, Martinez said softly. Mila pressed the stuffed dog into Hope's tiny hands. The baby grabbed onto it immediately, her fingers curling around the soft fur. She brought it to her mouth, gumming it the way babies do, and let out another happy gurgle. I think she loves it, David said, his voice choked with emotion. I think she knows, Mila added, looking at Coda with infinite gratitude. Somehow, I think she knows. 1 year later, Hope's first birthday party was held in the same park on a perfect sunny afternoon. The blanket had been replaced by a proper picnic setup, with balloons and streamers and a small cake decorated with a single candle. Hope was walking now, wobbly, unsteady steps that ended more often in sitting down than staying upright, but walking nonetheless. She wore a little dress covered in flowers, and in her arms, always, was the stuffed German shepherd she'd been given on that day months ago. Doggy, she would say, pointing at the toy. It was one of her first words, along with Mama and Dada. The party was full of people, family, friends, neighbors, and of course, Officer Reyes and Coda. Hope's face had lit up the moment she saw Coda arrive. She'd toddled over as fast as her little legs could carry her, arms outstretched, squealing with delight. Doggy! Doggy! Coda lay down immediately, making himself small and non-threatening, letting the tiny human pat his head with her clumsy but affectionate hands. His tail wagged gently, and his eyes were soft with contentment. He loves her, Reyes said to Mila, watching the interaction with a smile. Every time I mention coming to see you, he gets excited. I think he feels responsible for her. He is responsible for her, Mila said simply. She wouldn't be here without him. We wouldn't be here without him. As the afternoon wore on, as Hope smashed her cake and opened her presents and laughed with the pure, unbridled joy that only a child can express, Mila found herself standing beside Reyes, both of them watching the celebration. Do you ever think about how close we came? Mila asked quietly. How easily this could have gone differently? Every day, Reyes admitted. But then I look at Hope, and I look at Coda, and I think about how much good came from one dog who refused to give up, not just saving your lives, but changing the entire K-9 program, inspiring other departments, making people think differently about what dogs can do, what they can sense. He started a revolution, Mila said with a smile. He started a conversation, Reyes corrected, about trust, about listening, about paying attention to the things we can't always see or understand. Hope toddled over then, her face covered in frosting, her stuffed German shepherd clutched in one hand. She held it up to the real Coda, as if introducing them. Doggy meet doggy, she announced proudly. Everyone laughed, and Coda sniffed politely at the stuffed animal, then gave Hope's frosting-covered face a gentle lick. She giggled and threw her tiny arms around his neck, hugging him with all the strength her small body could muster. Love you, doggy, she said, the words muffled against his fur. Coda's tail wagged, and he looked up at Reyes with an expression that could only be described as pure happiness. This is why, that look said. This is why we do what we do. 2 years later, Officer Miguel Reyes stood at a podium in front of a conference room filled with K-9 handlers from departments across the country. On the screen behind him was a photo of Coda, not in action, not making an arrest or finding drugs, but sitting calmly beside a hospital bed, his head resting gently on the mattress, his eyes full of compassion. Medical alert detection in K-9 units isn't just about training, Reyes was saying. It's about trust. It's about understanding that our partners can sense things we can't. It's about listening, really listening, when they try to tell us something. He clicked to the next slide. A photo of Mila, David, and Hope at the park, all of them smiling, healthy, alive. This family is here today because one dog refused to give up trying to communicate danger. For 2 weeks, Coda alerted on a woman who was suffering from a condition that would have killed her and her unborn baby if left untreated. For 2 weeks, I didn't listen. His voice caught, but he continued. I'm standing here today to tell you that our dogs are smarter, more capable, and more intuitive than we often give them credit for. They can detect diseases, seizures, heart attacks, dangerous drops in blood sugar, and yes, even life-threatening pregnancy complications. But they can only save lives if we learn to trust them, if we learn to listen. The room was silent, every handler hanging on his words. The program we've developed here, the Medical Alert K9 program, is based on what Coda taught us. Since implementing it, our K9 units have identified and helped save 17 lives. 17 people who might not be here if we hadn't learned to pay attention to what our dogs were trying to tell us. Applause filled the room, and Reyes felt a swell of pride, not for himself but for Coda, who was waiting patiently backstage, probably napping. After the presentation, handlers lined up to meet Coda, to ask questions, to learn from the dog who had changed everything. And Coda, gracious as always, accepted the attention with dignity, allowing himself to be petted and photographed and admired. But when a small commotion arose at the back of the conference hall, Coda's ears perked up immediately. His body went alert, not with aggression, but with recognition. Reyes turned and smiled. Mila, David, and Hope had arrived. Hope was 3 now, tall for her age, with bright eyes and a mischievous smile. The moment she saw Coda, she broke free from her parents' hands and ran toward him. "Coda!" she shouted, her voice ringing through the conference hall. The dog's tail began to wag so hard that his entire body shook. When Hope reached him, he lowered himself to the ground and let her climb onto his back, something they'd done 100 times before. "I brought you something," Hope announced, pulling a drawing from her backpack. It was a child's crayon drawing of a dog with a cape flying through the air. "It's you! You're a superhero!" Coda sniffed the drawing politely, then licked Hope's hand, making her giggle. Reyes knelt beside them, his heart full. "What do you say, partner? Are you a superhero?" Coda's tail wagged in response, but his eyes said something deeper. "I'm just a dog who loves his people. That's all I've ever been." 5 years later. The Riverside Police Department K9 training facility was state-of-the-art now, funded by grants and community donations inspired by Coda's story. In the main hall, there was a bronze statue of a German shepherd, alert, noble, compassionate, with a plaque that read, "In honor of Coda, K9 Unit, Riverside Police Department. Who taught us that the greatest courage is refusing to give up, even when no one is listening? 2 lives saved, countless more inspired, a legacy that will endure forever." Coda had retired from active duty a year ago, and now he lived full-time with Reyes, spending his days in the sunshine, playing with Reyes's own young children, and making occasional visits to schools and hospitals to spread joy and inspire hope. But once a month, like clockwork, Reyes would drive Coda to a familiar house on the edge of town, and Hope Chen, now 8 years old, would burst through the front door squealing with delight, throwing her arms around the dog who had saved her life before she was even born. They would spend the afternoon together, Hope reading to Coda from her school books, showing him her latest art projects, telling him about her dreams of becoming a veterinarian when she grew up so she could help animals the way he had helped her. And Coda would listen, his head resting on her lap, his eyes warm and content. On this particular afternoon, as the sun set and painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, Hope looked at Coda with the serious expression that sometimes crossed her young face. "Coda," she said softly, "do you know you're the reason I'm here?" The old dog's tail thumped once against the floor. "Mama says you wouldn't stop trying to save us. Even when no one believed you, you didn't give up." She wrapped her arms around his neck, burying her face in his fur. "Thank you for not giving up on us. Thank you for being so brave." Coda let out a soft, contented sigh, the sound of a dog who had lived a life of purpose, who had made a difference, who had saved lives simply by refusing to be silent when danger approached. Mila stood in the doorway, watching her daughter with the dog who had saved them both, and tears of gratitude streamed down her face. Some bonds transcend words. Some connections run deeper than species. Some heroes don't wear capes or badges. They wear fur and wagging tails and hearts full of unconditional love. And sometimes, the greatest gift we can receive is a second chance. A chance that comes because one remarkable soul refused to stop fighting for us, even when the world wasn't listening. Coda had given that gift to Mila and Hope, and in return, they had given him something just as precious. The knowledge that his voice had been heard, that his instincts had been trusted, that his love had been enough. As the last rays of sunlight faded and the stars began to emerge, Hope whispered one final thing to her guardian angel. "I love you, Coda, forever and ever." And deep in his heart, in the place where dogs keep their most treasured memories, Coda knew. This was why he had never given up. This was why he had barked desperately, frantically, refusing to be silenced. Because love, true, selfless, unconditional love, always finds a way. Even when it seems too late, even when no one is listening, love always, always finds a way.